Have I ever mentioned that Maryland is the California of the East? We may have a Republican governor, but it's still run by the Democrats and controlled by the Democrats, and even our Republican governor is a rhino, but he can only do so much with a Democratic legislature. One of the things that makes us the California of the East is our restrictions on fertilizer in agriculture and what we can put on our crops. Every year we have to come up with a nutrient management plan similar to this right here. What that means is every 3 years we have to take soil samples of our field. Nothing wrong with that. You know, you need to know where your soils are. We take the soil samples. It has to be done by law every 3 years. Then based on those soil samples, we have to develop a nutrient management plan that spits out all these fancy reports here to tell us how much fertilizer we can put on each field. Fertilizer, you see that word recommendation? No, it's not really recommendation. It's pretty much the law. If you don't follow it, you'll go to prison for life. They'll take everything you've got, and yeah, it's not pretty if you don't follow it. So it's, as I said, it's not really a recommendation. It's all in the name of cleaning up the Chesapeake Bay. Well, the Chesapeake Bay is pretty clear. I think farmers have done their job. If it were up to government officials, those in charge of this nutrient management law, regulation, whatever you want to call it, we would have a different fertilizer analysis for every field that we work. And if your field is larger than 20 acres, they would like you to split it into two and take a sample of half of the field. So for instance, if you have a 100-acre field, that's very rare around here in St. Mary's County anyway, but if you have a 100-acre field, you should probably split that into about 4 different sections and take 4 different samples of soil and split it up. And even within each of those sections, we could probably have 4 different types of soil within each of those 25-acre grids. But anyhow, getting a little bit beyond what I wanted to talk about. Out of those 4 different sections of the field, you will come up with a different recommendation. Even though you're going to plant the entire field in corn or soybeans, it may be a different recommendation for each section of the field based on the fertility. And as I said, the government officials would like you to have 4 different analyses to spread on that field. It's not really feasible to do that. So let me just give you an example. So here on the home farm, we have 2 different fields. We've got a 2.5-acre field here and a 9-acre field over there. So 2 different recommendations. I sample each field separately. And the recommendations, so this year, I am putting soybeans on that field, on this farm, the 2 fields. So here in the first field, field number 1, soybeans, 2.5 acres, shooting for 65 bushels to the acre. The recommendation is I only need potash. The phosphorus is high, so I need to apply 70 pounds of actual potash. On the 9-acre field, field number 2, shooting for the same yield, 65 bushels to the acre. Well, I need 45 pounds of phosphorus and 123 pounds of potash. So just on those 2 fields, 2 separate fertilizer analysis. And what it's all about is phosphorus. If your soils are high in phosphorus, they don't want you putting any more phosphorus on those fields at all, for fear that it's going to move into the Chesapeake Bay and kill all the crabs and the oysters, and the boaters will not be able to move their boats because the algae blooms will be so thick. And yeah, it's all about the phosphorus. Nitrogen, yeah, they're still concerned about nitrogen, but phosphorus is the number 1 thing. Well, the reason for the difference in these 2 fields is years ago in the smaller field, we used to plant tobacco here. And so tobacco took a lot of fertilizer, and you just kept dumping the fertilizer on tobacco to make it grow and to get a higher yield for it. And you see that on a lot of different farms. People would take their best fields to plant tobacco on and just keep putting the fertilizer on. Well, it built the phosphorus levels up really high, and so now you're not allowed to apply any phosphorus. Just for my farm, the 350 to 400 acres that I'm working, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages. 7 pages. And this isn't the entire nutrient management plan. It's almost a book that you have to produce every year for your nutrient management plan. They do audits. I have had audits done where they come down, they want to inspect your plan, they want to look at your fertilizer receipts, see how much you've put out there. Yeah. So we have to hire people to do this, to write this plan, so that's not cheap. The government does provide some plan writers through our extension service. Well, I've heard the guy for our area, for our county that writes plans, he's months and months behind. When I was in my fertilizer dealer last month, there were guys still waiting on plans. It was time to put fertilizer on wheat, and they still did not have their recommendations from the extension office. So you can get it done for free. You can pay somebody, a professional who has to go to training and do classes and pay fees and all of that. You can pay somebody to do it. Or as a farmer, you can become certified to write your own plans. That's what I have done. I went to class, took the test, I've got certified. And then even with that certification, every year you have to go to different training sessions. Sometimes it's as simple as a field day. Your standard field days in the summertime where you're going to look at fertilizer experimentations or chemical experimentations or whatever. That will get you your credits to keep your license renewed and up to date. But this is how dumb the renewal is and to keep your license up to date. If you just send your, I think it's your soil samples to Maryland State Government, to the nutrient management section, you automatically get, I think, 2 credits right there just for sending them your soil information. So what really does that do as far as keeping you up to date on this? It's similar to the pesticide license, and that's a whole nother thing. It means absolutely nothing. Unless there has been a change in the law or in the regulations, why should I go waste some time just to get some credits or send them information? Well, it's all about control and them wanting the information. It just pisses me off that we have to do this. Economically, it's not feasible to put too much fertilizer, especially in a year like this. Well, here's the other thing. Their recommendations don't necessarily allow you to try to increase yields each year. You have to pick your 5 or 10 year average of yields, and that's what you put on here to get the recommendation. So it is hard to try to increase yields because they don't want you putting on more fertilizer than what your previous 10-year yield average was. And even their recommendations, for instance, for wheat, 1 pound of nitrogen per expected bushel of wheat yield. You can't achieve, for instance, 75 bushels to the acre yield with just 75 pounds of nitrogen. So 1 pound per bushel. You can't do it. You've got to bump that up to about 1.2, 1.3 pounds per bushel. It's just BS. You know, the waters are cleaner now than I have seen them in 40 years. I've shown you, if you look at some of my videos, I've shown you the clarity of the Chesapeake Bay and the Potomac River and how clear it is. I think farmers have done their job as far as cleaning up the water, but these regulations just keep getting worse and worse, and now they're going after chemicals, and they want to try to prevent us from using Roundup and some chemicals that are affecting the bees and the pollinator crops. Atrazine, they've been trying to ban that for years and years. Yeah, it just keeps getting worse and worse, and now there's talk of food shortages. What about this deal with the food processing plants over the last month? What has it been? 12 different incidences, whether it's fires or plane crashes into food processing plants here in the U.S.? That's some scary stuff. The bird flu that we're dealing with now, where whole flocks of chickens are being destroyed. I've been to Cuba, where there are food shortages, where your citizens are standing in line for food. Cuba has control over their people because they control the food. And I think that's where our government is trying to take us. Is it a conspiracy theory? I'm beginning to think not. 12 processing plants destroyed by fire or planes or other things in a month. Yeah, okay. I hope we don't see the food shortages and the lines, but with our government and the way it's going, who knows? Who knows? All right, this went longer than I thought. It's a bit boring, but these are some of the regulations we're dealing with. People always ask me, what is the worst thing about farming? It's government regulations that we have to deal with. And we're pretty lucky compared to other industries. We do get a lot of breaks. I don't deny that. But there are just some things that we're overburdened on with regulations. Okay, I've got the fertilizer down. I've got one more farm to spread for soybeans. After this spell, we're getting some rain this evening, going back down into the 40s. The next couple of nights only near 60 degrees for a couple of days. Then after that, it looks like it's going to warm up. I'll get the corn planter out. It'll be time to plant corn. So I'm headed up to the hardware store now to get my order done for the week. It's payroll day, so when it rains this afternoon, I'll be at the desk getting everybody paid so they continue to come to work and remain happy. Okay, yep, that's enough rambling. So I'm going to say, see ya. Okay, I said see ya too soon. One other thing I forgot to mention about this. So let's say we've prepared this plan in January and February. We've got everything documented on what we want to do. So let's say I was going to plant corn out here, and that's what my plan says. Well, let's say March, April roll around, either market conditions change, or this year maybe we can't get fertilizer or seed, or maybe it turns wet for a month, and I have seen that happen, and we can't get in the fields, and now it's the end of May, the 1st of June, it's too late to plant corn, and we have to switch to soybeans and plant soybeans in this field. Guess what? You now have to contact the person who wrote the plan for you, and he or she has to rewrite the plan to say, nope, scratch that. We are not planting corn there. We're now planting soybeans there. So then you got to rewrite the whole plan and make adjustments to that and get it documented. And if you don't have this plan in order when you get audited, as I said, you're going to prison for life. It may even be the death chair. I don't know. I have actually had a fine assessed on me 15 years ago, and it was something simple. I think my license had expired. I had let it expire. I hadn't taken the classes that were necessary. Gosh, I can't remember now. And I had to pay a fine. Was it $250 or $500 or something like that? Yeah. It's, as I said, I think it's just BS. And you can talk to most farmers in the state of Maryland, and they're going to tell you the same thing. Here's the other thing. So there's a big problem on the eastern shore with the phosphorus levels being high, and that is because of the use of chicken manure. Lots of chickens grown on the eastern shore, lots of manure produced. So for years and years, farmers just dump the manure out on the fields, phosphorus levels built up, and they're saying, that is leaching into the Chesapeake Bay and causing water issues. So what did our government do? They came up with this bright idea, hey, let's pay to move the chicken manure off of the eastern shore to other places. And guess what those other places are? Well, lo and behold, St. Mary's County. Lots of chicken manure come into St. Mary's County. Well, if you look at a map of St. Mary's County, guess what? We're on a peninsula surrounded by water. But yet, chicken manure on the shore was not good. Too much of it getting into the bays and the rivers. So let's bring it to St. Mary's County, surrounded by bays and rivers. Where does that make sense? Here's the other thing. One agency wants you to incorporate the chicken manure. The Nutrient Management Agency says you should incorporate the chicken manure within 24 or 48 hours. I've only used chicken manure 1 year. Again, it's the government bureaucracy. That's why I don't use chicken manure. The less they know what I'm doing, the better off I am. If you're using chicken manure, you have to report more to the government. They know more about you. So they want you to incorporate chicken manure, I think, within 24 to 48 hours, so it doesn't leach off, run off into the bay if you get a rain. But yet, Soil Conservation District is pushing for no-till in your fields, and they want you to continue no-tilling so you don't get erosion of soil into the field. So you have soil conservation pushing no-till, nutrient management pushing getting the chicken manure off of the shore, bringing it to other places like St. Mary's County, and then wanting you to till the soil to incorporate it. Yep, 2 government agencies. Don't know what the other one's doing. I've generalized this a lot, but you get the idea. Government regulations, they're not always great, and they don't always make sense. And my running for county commissioner is not out of the woods yet. I can still run as an independent. The deadline has passed for Republicans and Democrats to run. But if I run, my campaign slogan, if you have to have one, is going to be common sense, not science. Now, I cannot change nutrient management regulations at the county level, but there's other things that I could be effective in changing if elected as county commissioner. Common sense, not science. Oh, yeah, we've seen science and where that has taken us the last 2 years. Okay, blood pressure going up. It's time for me to stop this and go to my happy place, which I guess that's in my office at the store where nobody usually bothers me. Okay, now I'm saying, see ya.